The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we do that every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. So if you listen to the show consistently, you can break into this industry and find your first job. Or if you're already in the industry, you might find that next promotion. And if you're a marketing professional, well, you might find your next agency partner. This week, we feature Pedro Lerma. Pedro allows me to call him Pete in this episode because I don't believe I'm pronouncing it correctly. So Pete, we'll call him, is the CEO and founder of Lerma. Lerma is an independent ad agency based in Dallas, Texas. And he talks about how he broke into this industry, but he also talks about what's Lerma up to today. Avocados from Mexico, Home Depot, Salvation Army, and He Gets Us. Those are those Jesus ads that you see on TV. All of these ads that they're creating are centered around their belief of creating good for their employees and for their clients and the consumers of all the ads that they create. So he talks about that as well. He talks about his break-in process. It's fairly unconventional, including mocking up himself on an Ad Age front page article and sending that to the Richards Group back in the day. Fast forward to 2024 and 2025 when we're recording this, he was actually named Agency Executive of the Year by Ad Age. So it's a full circle moment, and if you listen, you'll maybe better your chances of being an Agency Executive of the Year one day. Just a great guy. Everything that they're doing is really, really interesting and strategic. So please listen to the full episode and connect with Pete on LinkedIn and leave this episode 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you have the time. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Pedro Lerma, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Gino. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time. So please tell us, where are you calling in from today, sir?
I am in Dallas, Texas. That's where the agency's based. And we're having decent weather today, which is not always the case, but all good. All good in Dallas.
Nice. Great. Well, I'm excited to talk with you. I'm excited to talk with you about your role as CEO and founder of Lerma and how it's evolved, some of the work that you guys are putting out lately, and then all your advice for the next generation. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Wonderful. Well, let's kick it off from the top, Pedro. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners? They should know you, but for those who don't know, who are you and what are you up to today?
Sure. I'm Pedro Lerma, also known as Pete. Some people call me Pete. I grew up as Pete. I'm the CEO and founder of Lerma, and we're a Dallas-based agency that has really had a couple of lives. So we used to be a part of the Richards Group. It used to be called Richards Lerma. We were focused on the Hispanic market, and a few years ago we became an independent agency. And at that time, we really broadened the approach that we took. And we still talk about ourselves as having multicultural DNA, but we talk more about ourselves as a cross-cultural agency now built on a foundation of multiculturalism, which we think makes us unique and relevant to brands today as they try to navigate the more multicultural future.
Got it. So you're independent today. That's the truth. Okay. Understood. Part of Richards Group beforehand. Now you're independent.
Right.
What are the benefits of being independent? What do you like about it?
Interestingly, I grew up within that environment. I was there for 23 years and, had heard for years about the benefits of independence, not having external shareholders or a holding company that might have different priorities than we do as a group of people that want to serve our clients and do great work. And it's nice not to have to answer to somebody that doesn't share those exact same priorities.
Gotcha. Yes. That's something that we constantly explore on this show over the past 5 years. And that remains the true statement, sentiment across every single person that I talk to. Can we dig deeper though? Like, can you give us an example of why, like, how you put something through because you're independent, where the holding company layers of bureaucracy didn't kill the idea?
Well, when you started asking that question, I actually went to really more fundamental decisions that I get to make. And so, if we have experienced some decline in the client budget, if we hit difficult economic times, I'm the one that gets to make the decision about, do we hang on to people longer than maybe a holding company would have us hang on to? And the answer is yes. I get to make those decisions, and I think if you were to ask people here, they would tell you that we make lots of those kinds of decisions. Whether it's somebody that has only been here a short period of time and they encounter some medical issue that means they might have only been a part of the company for a week, and all of a sudden they've got some really tough times ahead of them. It might be months, and I'm the one that gets to make the decision that, hey, we're going to support this person. We're going to make sure that they have the medical benefits that they need, and I don't know that that's always the case within a bigger holding company or a company that has external shareholders.
Right. It's that human element, the touch that you can put on to those those important decisions that
Right.
a lot of times holding companies might view just on the numbers. Let's save money, let's save costs, let's increase revenue, let's keep that runway going nice and clean. But that you could do whatever you'd like, which is great. Um, Fantastic. So tell me more about Lerma today. Who are some of the clients? What are you really proud of recently? Some of the work. Let's talk about that.
Sure. So some of our clients include Avocados from Mexico. We've worked with them for 10 years. We have, for a lot of that time, we were their digital agency, and we supported all of their digital and social efforts going into Super Bowls. And we are really proud of the fact that we had consistently made them the top, most talked about brand in social media. If it's one or two, the top one or two brands, and always overwhelmingly positive sentiment. And we did that with what I would bet is a fraction of the budget of big telecom companies or car companies or beer companies. They spend a fortune to try to dominate conversation, and just with putting together over the years, I think a really robust Super Bowl playbook and having a brand that people want to love, we've been really successful there. We've recently also launched some television for them. The work right now is called Say It with a Jingle. And so Avocados from Mexico jingle is a pretty famous jingle. I have people tell me all the time that their kids, they might be in a carpool or something like that, and they're in the back seat singing Avocados from Mexico. And so we took that and we turned it into a fun campaign about delivering bad news, but if you deliver it to the tone of Avocados from Mexico, everything ends up being okay. It's an acceptable setback. One of the spots is a quarterback who gets benched, and he said, "You're not going to start this game," and the quarterback is like, "Okay," not a big deal. And it's a whole series of those, and it's a simple, fun approach. Somebody told me a long time ago, big ideas are almost always simple. And again, that jingle is really well known, and adapting that to these fun scenarios is a simple solution, but it's turned out to be a really effective solution, work that's really performing well for that client. The Home Depot is another one of our longstanding client relationships, and We have helped them grow into new markets. As an example, we launched a Latina Doers campaign. So within home improvement, um, women are often underrepresented, and even within women, you've got Latinas who are even more underrepresented. And we put them at the center of this campaign, and that too has performed incredibly well. We actually put that work through the ANA's SIM testing, and it scored some of the highest scores that they have ever seen. And um, again, we put Latinas at the center of that, but as we um, launched that work, what we found is that work resonated not just with Latina women, but women overall. And even the male segment of the Home Depot's customer was drawn into that message. And so something that I've told clients for a long time is really played out in this case, which is you should consider leading your storytelling with the underrepresented part of your customer base. And when you do that, you're going to resonate, of course, with that underrepresented customer, but it's going to have a halo effect. And this was a really great example of that.
Wow.
We've also launched work for Husky Tools, which I'm a big fan of. EcoSmart, which is a private label brand within the Home Depot, Hampton Bay, and so we continue to grow into new categories with the Home Depot client. The Salvation Army is another one of our clients, and I'm just recently I was updated on some of our holiday or Christmas efforts, and at a time of economic and political uncertainty, what we found was that we were able to tap into generosity and human generosity, and as a result, we were able to break records in terms of fundraising. That means that Salvation Army can get out there and do the work in the community that's necessary. And the work that we did, the primary work that we launched there, we launched last year. It was a spot called Silent Night that tells the story of a single mother who's been evicted, and it shows the struggles that she goes through, just trying to keep herself and her kids safe. And it's a spot that resonated incredibly well with the audience. This year we added a spot called Noise that tells the story of a young girl trying to essentially play a mom to her two younger brothers, and how she and her dad are just trying to make a household, and the role that the Salvation Army can play in either one of those stories, to just help people get by, is incredibly powerful. And again, it ended up resulting in us seeing incredible generosity from the audience. So we're really proud of that work too. He Gets Us is another one of our clients. We recently launched a mini docu-series that asks the question, what are you sick of? And as you might imagine, there are things that people are sick of, politics and the division. But it dug a lot deeper, and we sent teams out all over the country to talk to people. And the docu-series is really powerful. And to me, the takeaway is we have a lot more in common than we think we do. And those kinds of stories need to be told, and I'm excited for people to see that work.
It's powerful stuff. I think that's like the through line for a lot of the work that you guys are putting out. Powerful, emotionally resonant, smart, and strategic. So,
Well, we became independent. One of the things that we got a chance to do was really decide what kind of an agency do we want to be. And I have really spent my adult life involved in a lot of nonprofit work. When I was growing up, we were not wealthy by any stretch. We were, lower middle class, and there were lots of people who helped me. Lots of people, lots of organizations, and so as soon as I got any kind of a platform where I could give back, I felt really compelled to do so. And so that had always been a part of Richard's Lerma. But when we became independent, we really wanted to put that at the center of what we do. And so we decided that our agency vision would be to channel creativity for good. And what we mean by that is a couple of things. One, of course, we have to do good by our clients. They've got KPIs that they need to meet, and it's our job to help them meet and exceed those KPIs. But it also has to do with the relationship between the work that we put out there and the audience. And we talk a lot about how we want our work to enrich the lives of the people who encounter that. And so that can be in big ways, it can be in small ways. We talk about avocados from Mexico. If we can put a smile on your face, even if just for a moment, we believe that that enriches your life. If for the Home Depot, we can help you make your home a better place for you and your family, either by delivering value or utility. So, even a message that is a price and an item can still enrich your life, in something like that. With the Salvation Army, I say if we can get somebody to be more philanthropic, either with their time or their money, we believe that that will enrich their lives. And ultimately, with He Gets Us, whether you are a believer or not, if a message like that can compel you to want to be a better person, to maybe want to follow in the example of Jesus, we believe that that will enrich your life. And so it's something that I'm really glad we were able to put at the center of who we are as an agency, and it really has permeated the work that we do.
Yeah, it's a great North Star to follow. I'm sure everybody can easily get on board with that, including your employees, but also the clients that are looking at other agencies and they see you all. If there is that alignment, it's a no brainer to want to
Right.
work with an agency that has that clear positioning, which is what I find the most interesting is how agencies position themselves and communicate themselves today, because there's 15, 16, 17,000 agencies, it seems like, in the US today. So that's why I like this show. It's my own little personal database of who's saying what, and then does the work match up with that? And it
Right.
seems like it does with you all. Now, how many people can we talk a little bit about the makeup of the agency today? So it's located in Dallas, we know. Are there any other offices? Are people major? Are there a lot of them in Dallas area? Tell me more about the makeup of the agency today.
Sure. So we are at about 150 people now.
Nice.
I would say 85% of them are in the Dallas area. And so, there's a lot of community here that we've been able to build. In fact, when we became independent in April of 2021,
Okay.
so we were, still in pandemic time periods. But I decided that having an office was going to be really important to us. I had never set out to try to build a virtual agency, and I really feel like being together is important to me. I thrive on being around people. I can't imagine not. And so I wanted to create a space where people would want to come and engage with their counterparts, support one another, and it's been great. So we built out offices, and we have asked people to be here 3 days a week, and we don't dictate what days they're here. We ask them, even on the days that they come in, I wanted to still acknowledge and respect that people have developed new life patterns. And so even on the days that people come in, we ask them to be here for 5 hours. And so if you are used to taking your kids to school or picking them up in the afternoon, if you work out, in the morning or at a certain time, it still allows for lots of flexibility,
Yeah.
even on the days that you do come into the office. But as we built the offices, architecturally, we really focused on creating a space that fostered collaboration and community. And then, I guess, operationally, we've also done a lot of work at the leadership level to make sure that as we have people come into the office, we have reasons for them to come into the office. And it has to do with collaboration and connection and creativity. And, I did not want to have an office where people just came here, and spend the whole day on a video call. That to me was not the best use of a space like this.
Totally. Totally. So understood. Can we kick things back now? I want to understand how you broke into this business.
Yeah.
It is the name of the show, Breaking Entering. So, at what point in your life did you say to a young Pete, I want to make ads for a living. I'm going to pursue this?
So I have an odd path, I think, and that is when I was in college, I had to work for just tuition money, and so um, I took a job selling airtime at a local radio station. And through that job, I would drive around town and knock on doors, the local car dealership, the furniture store, that kind of stuff, to sell them 30-second spots on the radio. Through that job, I met a guy who had a small agency, and it really came to like him and spent some time with him. And one day he asked me, "Why don't you come to work for me?" And I had not planned to study advertising or anything like that. But I really had come to like him and the environment he'd created. It was, a cool, fun, creative environment. And so I said, "Sure, I'll come to work for you." And so I wasn't even out of school, and I started working as an account guy at this small agency. And I worked for him for 4 years. And it ended up that, and this was a stupid move on my part, that I ended up dropping out of school because I was already in a profession. And after 4 years there, I decided I needed to move to the big city. And I grew up and went to school in Wichita Falls, Texas. And I tell people, when you grow up in Wichita Falls, the big city is Dallas. It's not necessarily New York, of course. The big city is, you go to Dallas. That's where you go if you want to go see, a band, if you want to see an athletic event, if you want to go shopping, that kind of thing.
Spots. It's where everybody wants to be there. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I set out to move to Dallas and to try to get a job at one of the bigger agencies. And I had read about the agencies in Dallas at the time. The big agencies were the Richards Group, of course, Timberland McLean, Tracy Locke, and I again took an odd approach to getting the Richards Group's attention. I had a friend of mine take a picture of me in a parking lot that was across the street from the Richards Group building. Big building, had the Richards Group name at the top, and I just stood there with my hands up. And then I took that photograph and I mocked up a cover of Ad Age. And this was before, Photoshop for me. And so what I did was I was using, scissors and Scotch tape and a color copier to create this fake Ad Age cover that had me at the center, and the headline said, Lerma joins the Richards Group, has the competition scrambling. And then I ended up creating a resume that was 2 pages. So there was the cover, you would open that up, and there was the cover, my letter, and then my resume. And I've told people since then, I think of it as, it's kind of a cheesy thing to do, but I didn't know any better. And
Fun. Why not?
And it was enough to get me a phone call, right? And after 11 interviews, they really weren't sure they wanted to hire me.
11?
After 11 interviews, I ended up getting hired in the digital practice. So, I was interviewed within the main agency, and they, I think they were probably just being nice. They said, "Oh, you should talk to so-and-so in the promotions group." And then they sent me over to the digital group. And finally, the digital group said, "Hey, okay, we'll give you a shot."
It's a good group to be in, though, probably around that time.
This was 1998. That group was about 5 people at the time and really didn't have any direction. And little by little, I saw needs and opportunities, and I would put plans together and present those to my boss at the time. And he didn't know digital any more than I did. And so he would say, "Okay, go do it." Whether that was building a media practice, a search practice, it was a land of opportunity for me. So I'm really grateful for having started in that practice. I think, to your point, if I had started within the main agency, I might not have been given that entrepreneurial opportunity. And it really helped shape kind of my entrepreneurial journey because I built that practice up to become the largest of the specialized disciplines within the Richards Group. And then in 2009, Stan Richards and I decided to launch a Hispanic agency, which became Richards Lerma. Um, and that really gave me even more autonomy than I had within the digital group.
Yeah.
Um, and so it has really been a really great journey that I'm grateful for. I think it's unconventional, but that's okay. And I've learned a lot of lessons along the way.
Yeah.
As we talk about breaking and entering, what are some of those lessons? I think about taking a chance. Like what a goofy thing to do. To create a mocked up cover of a magazine to get somebody's attention. But actually, somebody did that something similar to us here recently. We are on the seventh floor of our building, and there's a parking lot next door. And one day, I guess it was in late summer, we saw somebody out there that had created this gigantic, it was a sheet, it was a QR code, and he had set up his guitar amp and a microphone, and the sign said, "Hire me." And he was out there just singing his heart out, and of course, so I looked out the window, I did the QR code and learned about him, and then because again it was in late summer, and so I thought somebody needs to take him some water. So I was able to kind of have a break in my day, and I took some cold water out there to him, and I invited him into the agency, and I said, "Look, I am in back-to-back meetings, but I want you to meet some people." And so I brought him in, and he met some of the team. And just so you know, the reason that he, I think, was playing the guitar and all of that is because here in our office, one of the things that we built out was a full stage. We have a stage that is completely equipped with drums, guitars, amplifiers. We've got a gigantic PA system, lighting. Music is one of my passions, and we've got a lot of musicians within the agency. And so that ends up being just a part of who we are as a culture, and he knew that. And
Okay, that
so,
makes sense. Okay.
so it's, he took a
The
different
context helps.
than I took, but he got my attention, and so I might tell people, you've got to make it your own, right? Like whatever feels right for you, just find that thing that sets you apart, and take that risk, allow yourself to be vulnerable, and it'll pay off.
Absolutely. Did that person go for an account role or a creative role or a strategy role?
He's a creative guy.
Did he have the portfolio in addition to the
Yes,
stunt?
yes, he
That
did.
See, that's what I try to tell people.
Yeah,
That's my advice. Focus on the work first. Make sure the portfolio looks good. You got the craft. If you're an art director or copywriter, and then if you're not getting the attention because people are busy, then
hmm
you can think about something more interesting, an activation of some sort like this. But if he were to go out there and just get your attention, and then he had no work to back it up, then it's a different conversation, most
yeah,
likely.
yeah. And I still, man, I gotta tell you, I have a lot of heart
Yeah.
for somebody who is hungry, who's willing to hustle,
Yep.
and even if they didn't have the work, um, I would work hard to try to find a place for them because
Yeah.
there's such a value to people who are hungry.
Absolutely. And not everybody's like that. Not every agency leader operates that same way. So there are the passion identification is so important because they're going to be willing to work really hard. And you saw yourself
Yeah.
within this person, and that also goes a long way too. So
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense there. And what I really liked about when you broke in at first in that digital practice was it allowed you to be entrepreneurial. And that to me, I bet you agree with this, set off a domino effect early in your career where you were able to test, iterate, craft a plan, pitch it, test it out, and maybe it worked. Maybe some ideas didn't work. That's
Yeah.
fine too. but that gave you the bravery to keep on doing that within your career. It's no wonder why you're an agency leader today. And you also were on Ad Age recently as the 2024 Ad Age Agency Executive of the Year. So you had a little bit of a premonition early on in those days. You were essentially on the cover of Ad Age. So congrats to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and honestly, I hadn't even connected those dots until you just helped me connect them. So um, I'm a big believer in the power of visualization. In fact, that's one of the other things that I tell people, young people, is um, paint a picture of what it might be to work with you. And I've done that with clients too. So when we first started working with the Home Depot, I had just launched Richards Lerma. We were a small Hispanic agency, and they conducted a review, and we were up against bigger, more established uh, agencies. And one of the things that they asked us for in the final meeting was a staffing chart. Um, that business was pretty transformational for us because it was going to require a lot more FTEs than what I had on staff, right? I had 5 people, and let's just say the business was going to need 18 FTEs or something like that. What I did, in addition to preparing for the pitch, was I started interviewing people and actually asked them to come into the agency to get an agency headshot. And what I was able to do in that final presentation with the clients was, to put up a slide that had a full team of people. Um, and what I showed them was a folder that was full of resumes of the people that I had interviewed, and another folder that had offer letters for those people. And I said, as soon as you hire us, I will sign these offer letters, and this will be your team. And so it wasn't something that existed at that time, but it was something that I was able to convince the client, if you will believe in me, if you will give us a chance, I will build this. And it's happened more than once. When we separated from the Richards Group, the Salvation Army conducted a review, and we had an opportunity to pitch to retain that business. But again, one of the things they asked for was, in the process, they wanted to visit the agency's offices. We didn't have offices, and but I wasn't going to let that stop us. We had started to look for offices. I knew that I really liked this building. I was gravitating toward this building, and so I talked to the owners of the building, and I said, "Look, would you let us use this space, for one day for this meeting?" And they were willing. I talked to one of the other occupants in the building to see if they would let us use a conference room for the actual meeting part of that.
Yeah.
And so what we did was it was a several hour process, that final meeting. But somewhere in there we took a break. I invited them to the elevators. We came up to the top floor. We opened the doors, and I had a group of about, at the time, I guess it was about 40 people that we had. Everybody had come in, and they applauded the clients as we walked into the space. It was a blank floor, so no walls yet. And what I told those clients was, look, this is a group of people who care passionately about the work that the Salvation Army does in the world. This is a group of people that many of whom you've worked with for a while. They know your business. And this is the space that when you hire us, this will be our space and this will be your team. And again, they hired us. And I don't know how much of that had to do with that stunt, but to me, it's important to overcome whatever potential objections somebody might have to hiring you, and to do it in creative ways.
It applies both to the new business search and to the job search, very much so.
Yeah.
I think that can serve as inspiration to our listeners that are looking for their first or their next job or that next promotion. There's a lot of lessons there. So I appreciate you sharing.
You know what, Gino? There's something else I forgot to finish my story. A few years ago, I was asked, before I launched Lerma, I was asked to go back to my hometown and speak at a scholarship dinner. And I was flattered when they called, but I was also kind of embarrassed. I had to tell them, look, I did not graduate from college, and so you need to know that. I don't want to mislead you. And they said, look, we still think you've accomplished some great things, and we'd love to hear your story. And so I ended up putting the presentation together in a way that told my story, but shared in a group of about 400 people in the audience that I had dropped out of school and that I had regretted it. I felt like I'd had this cloud over my head, and always felt like I had to work twice as hard to be half as smart as the other people in our business. And so that was on a Saturday. That next Monday, I got a LinkedIn connection request from a professor at the university that I had gone to, Midwestern State University, small school in Wichita Falls, Texas. And he said, I heard your story, and if you want to finish, I will help you. And so I ended up getting on the phone with him and a couple of other people within the administration, and I committed to going back to school. And so for several years, I took one class a semester because I was running a company and I had other obligations. Sure. I took one class a semester, and in what's the date on this? December of 2022, I graduated. So,
boom.
I share that for a couple of reasons. One, because I never want to, to I guess glamorize the idea of dropping out of school and still being able to succeed. I'm grateful for my journey. I wouldn't change a thing, but I believe in education. And what was interesting though is I went through that process semester after semester after semester, and I didn't really think it would matter to me that much because it wasn't like I needed to finish school for my job. My boss wasn't going to give me a raise, right?
Yeah.
But when I actually got the diploma, it was an emotional moment for me. I really felt kind of I don't know, complete, I guess. And again, this dark cloud that I'd always felt was over me was gone. And so in any case, it's something that was important to me, and I'm glad that I got to check that box on my to-do list.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What's next on your to-do list?
So, well, we've grown a lot, and I tell people my job. I've got a lot of really great, smart, talented people around me, and I'm a big believer in empowering people. So I tell people my job is to not screw up all the great things that are happening here, right? And part of that is to seize opportunity when I see it and not to hesitate. I can imagine there are lots of companies who have had a similar ascent as ours, and at some point maybe they get conservative, maybe they hesitate on an opportunity, and I want to make sure that I move quickly to seize opportunities. I don't want to be hasty or foolish in decisions that I make, but I also don't want to be afraid. And that's something that I think any entrepreneur would tell you as a young person. I tell people all the time, take risks when you're younger in your career. The risks are, the price is a lot less than when you get to my age. When we became independent in 2021, I was 51 years old. and it was a big risk, right? So I had a comfortable job with security for a long time, and I was going to be putting myself in a position to, at that point, um, kind of captain the ship for 40 other people, and I was responsible for making sure all of our livelihoods stayed in place, right? And
Scary, scary stuff.
and it is, and I do regret that I didn't take some of those leaps of faith earlier in my career. Um, but it's a part of the journey is risk.
Well, I appreciate that. I need to hear that when we're doing breaking entering full time in New York.
Yep.
Me and my business partner. It's been a heck of a ride, but we got to do it now while we don't have kids and we're young. And I could sleep on the streets for a couple nights if I have to. It's no big deal. But the lesson that you can continue to take risks throughout your career, that's something that I need to hear because I can imagine being responsible for a family and for other employees' lives and their livelihoods and their children. That's where I might freeze up a little bit, and th- so I might have to call you back if that ever happens. There
Well,
is some seriousness that happens.
I'm sure other people would tell you this too, but you get more comfortable with risk as you go, right? You start taking risks earlier in your life. You see you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. Hopefully, you win more than not.
Yeah, yeah,
It builds your confidence, and so
yeah.
you get to a certain point where you've got a good sense for it. You've made enough of those decisions, you've taken enough of those risks that you have a sense for it. This is something that's manageable. I can manage the risk, and the likelihood of success is pretty great because I've done these kinds of things before.
Love it, love it. Well, is there anything else that you wish you would have known starting out in this industry?
Uh,
Uh, you could
yeah,
tell our listeners.
yeah. Two things that I tell young people. One is study communication. I have seen brilliant people who uh, struggle to communicate their ideas and they reach a ceiling, right? And it's unfortunate. And I've seen less brilliant people who are great at communicating and telling stories, and and they're unstoppable. And so, um, really, really apply yourself and focus on communication skills. The other thing I tell people is study leadership. And I look at leadership as different from management. I think about management as being something that can be done if you can handle a spreadsheet for a budget and a calendar for a timeline and a list of resources. You can manage people, you can manage projects, you can manage things. Leading is something different. It's about creating a vision that other people can see themselves in and see themselves succeeding in. And if you do it right, they will follow your vision. They will buy into your vision. To the extent that you can let them shape that vision, it's going to be even more powerful. And there are a couple of books that I always recommend to young people. One is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's it's supposed to be about public speaking, but it's really about human relationships, and it's a great, lots of really great lessons in there. And the other one is Primal Leadership. It's a book about emotional intelligence, and it talks about the four characteristics of a great leader being one, self-awareness. So I know what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and being really honest with yourself about that because we all have blind spots. The second thing is self-management. So knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, I'm going to work really hard to put myself in the right kinds of situations where my strengths shine, and whatever shortcomings I have are somehow either hidden or compensated for. The third characteristic is social awareness, and so within an agency, we have our own social sphere, right? But we also have our clients, and we need to understand our strengths and weaknesses, the strengths and weaknesses of the people around us, as well as our clients. It's our job often to compensate for the things that our clients aren't great at. And so the last characteristic is relationship management. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And when you do that, again, it's very human centered, but it plays on everybody's strengths. You put teams together that complement one another so that they're compensating again for the other shortcomings, and everybody gets a chance to win, and that's just so important. So that to me is a big part of leadership.
Communication and leadership. Yeah, if you have that vision, you got to be able to communicate it. That makes sense to me. So that's very clear, very clean advice. I appreciate you, sir. How can people reach out? Do they have any extra questions or they want to learn more about your agency? Well, where do people go?
Sure. Well, we have a website, lermaagency.com. People can connect with me on LinkedIn. And on the website, of course, if people want to send resumes, things like that, always happy to, take a look at resumes. We're always looking for great talent. So yeah.
Wonderful.
And of course, we're always looking for new clients. So
Absolutely.
here,
Absolutely.
we're open to work.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir. Really great stuff. Your story is so powerful. You've reached such great success in this industry. Thank you for giving us a little bit of insight in how to hopefully replicate some success like that in our own careers. So that's all we got. I think wishing you the best in 2025 and appreciate your time.
Likewise. Thanks, Gino, for having me on, and good luck to you as well.
Thank you, sir.